I want us to remember what happened that day and be horrified by ourselves.
New York in the late 1980s was a completely schizophrenic, divided city.
New York's now the capital of racial violence.
If I had more bullets, I would have shot them all again and again.
Off with the camera, man!
Last night, a woman jogger was found unconscious and partially clothed in Central Park. She was beaten and sexually assaulted. 5 youths were arrested at 96th Street, all between 14 and 15 years of age.
They got him!
First we was all together, then they started to put us in different rooms separately.
What did you do? Who were you with? Who did you come with?
The tone was very scary. I felt like they might take us to the back of the precinct and kill us.
You're not gonna go home until you give up a story.
I told my son, go to the park that night. I feel guilty.
I'm telling the guy, I don't know what you're talking about. They're getting a little angry.
And they're like, you know you did it, didn't you?
Yusef, take us back to that moment when you found out you were accused of doing something that you just didn't do. How did you wrap your head around that?
It was so unbelievable. It was the worst feeling in the world. Here I was, a child, thinking that America was nice and sweet and all rosy, and America was apple pie and blueberry pie and cherry pie. And then I was awakened at 15 to the American nightmare.
Did you keep thinking, somebody's gonna see, somebody's gonna figure this out, because this is just not true?
I gotta tell you, I held up hope and held on to hope all the way to the time that I was convicted. And then I needed to dive into some other kind of hope while I was going through the prison and industrial complex. You know, I found out that they wanted me to become an accident of time. They did not want me to succeed. They wanted me to fail. They wanted me to succumb to the awful label that they have placed on me. But yet we rose above that and became better and not bitter.
You have to explain to us how you were able to do that, because so many times people are going through something, and I could not imagine not much worse than being in prison. How were you able to do that? We want to say that prison is rehabilitative, but oftentimes we know people come out even more hurt.
One of the things that I really gravitated towards were the words of Dr. Maya Angelou, where she said, you should be angry, but you must not be bitter. She said, bitterness is like a cancer. It eats upon the host.
It doesn't do anything to the object of its displeasure.
Then she teaches us how to become alchemists. She says, use that anger. You dance it. You march it. You vote it. You do everything about it. You talk it. Never stop talking it. I heard the words of Mandiba, Nelson Mandela, and he's also a hero of mine, you know. And when he said that he had to leave anger and bitterness in the prison, or else it would have metastasized and destroyed him.
It's not easy if you are busy with constructive work to think about issues which make you bitter. Bitterness comes very easily when one is idle and has nothing to do.
That it was like drinking poison and expecting your enemy to die. I had to dive into my artwork in a way that was salvation. It saved my life. It gave me an out and allowed me to remain free even though I was in bondage, because as you know, wherever your mind goes, your body follows.
E.B., when did you first hear about this story?
Well, it was 1989, of course, and I was in the 6th grade, and I had a teacher who would bring newspapers to the class. And one of the first newspapers had the word Wilding across the top on the front page. And I was completely entranced by the story simply because those boys looked like the boys in my classroom, looked like the boys in my neighborhood, looked like family members. And I was thinking, could the boys I know be capable of such a heinous crime? And interestingly enough, I ran into Yusef again in college in 1999. He walked into a college classroom, and 2 years after he was he released from prison, and years before he was exonerated, I wanted to interview him about his story. And we ran into each other again, and here we are with this book. So this is cathartic for me. This is my way of saying something about growing up in New York City at the time, and how I was affected as a young girl, and how it continues to affect me as a mother of a teen boy.
I want to ask both of you to interpret the title of the book, Punching the Air. I'll start with you, E.B.
Punching the Air is one of the lines in one of the poems in the book. And it's the idea of punching something you could feel, but you can't see, like racial injustice, like racism, It's also an act of victory when you defeat something, when you win at something, you raise your fist to the air. So it has double meaning.
Yusef?
Punching the air, you know, for me, being a martial artist, it's also about thinking about life and understanding that when those challenges come to you, you want to shadow box. You want to be able to say, okay, I need to figure out how am I going to survive, you know? And so you begin to shadow box. And then also at the same time, you realize that as you're growing through what you're going through, that you are becoming victorious. You are surviving this. You are being a person who is the answer to the questions that you seek. You're providing hope for yourself. You're envisioning yourself going through this and getting out of it. And I think that that's the part that was most important. Being able to provide hope for yourself so that you did not have the defeatist mentality.
It's one thing to be set free. It's another thing to be exonerated. What was that feeling like when they said, okay, you are now the Exonerated Five?
Well, I tell you, that moniker that was placed on us in 1989 was not a moniker that we had chose for ourselves. Central Park 5 was something in a label that, you know, oftentimes they label things and they describe things, but there was a time where we needed to take back ownership of who we are. And we needed to describe to the rest of the world who we are. And it came in the most powerful way. We were on the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Money can't take back the time that we lost in those years. We will never get that back.
And she said, we are going to rebrand them. They are no longer going to be called the Central Park 5, but they will now be known as the Exonerated Five. And the Exonerated Five gives people the understanding that beyond a shadow of a doubt, we were not the ones who did this awful crime. We should have never gone to prison. And the worst part about it is that the system got it wrong. And as the system got it wrong, it allowed for the real criminal to continue to commit more crime until they were ultimately caught.
E.B., for this book, who is the reader and what do you want them to get from it? I can tell you everybody can be the reader for this book, but what are you hoping that people can get from it? As you mentioned, it's cathartic.
Yes, so Amal is 15 years old, and so this book is aimed at teen readers. But as Yusef and I like to say, this is for age 8 to 80. A 9-year-old who is an advanced reader who wants to understand racial injustice can read this book. But for the most part, what we want readers to get out of this is not just that it's about criminal justice or mass incarceration or racial injustice. It is about a boy, first and foremost, who is contending with his humanity. It is about a boy who loves art and uses art to speak truth to power and to redeem himself. So, you know, it's about the human child. Yusef was a child. The other members of the Exonerated Five were children, and we want readers to see that the character Amal as a child first.
Unfortunately, we know that there are many more Central Park Fives, and Yusef, one of the things that you do is you work with the Innocence Project.
Yes, indeed. It is an awesome opportunity, I think, to give back, to be able to work with an organization that is proving through deoxyribonucleic acid that people have to re-examine the criminal system of injustice. It is a system that will send a person to prison for decades prior to the truth coming out. And unfortunately, a lot of these cases go unsolved because of that actual fact. The fact that you have people languishing in prison, but that tells a different story as well. The most sinister side to that story is that there's a plot in America to keep slavery going by another name. As we look at what's happening on the political scene, we hear the president saying, make America great again. We hear the echoes of the words, you know, states' rights, but without the complete statement of states' rights to what? States' rights to own slaves. There is a desire, a sickness, running rampant in the world. And that sickness is a sickness where we have to fight against spiritual wickedness in high and low places. And the best thing about Punching the Air is it shows up at the right place and on the right time, providing water for the seeds of greatness inside young people and providing light in the darkness for all of us to be able to find the path and to move on into the great future that we know we can be.
E.B., Yusef, thank you so much. You are a big piece of that puzzle that we're going to have to put together to finally lay all of this to rest. So thank you so much.
Thank you.